Hey, welcome back to the a la carte sports betting channel. My name is Matt Man, aka Matthew. I think it was supposed to be opposite, but whatever. This is the sister channel to the Parlay Kitchen um, that will be hosted by myself and my friend JR. Here we are going to be bringing you the best single bets that I can see in the forthcoming sports betting market futures and things like that. But first, we're going to start with a recap of UFC 297 and a little bit of the NFL playoffs that are going on. We're going to start with the UFC 297, as that's what I feel I specialize in when it comes to betting. Um, so we're going to start with our first play, our most main attacked play, which was the Sean Strickland versus Dricus Duplessis fight. I chose Dricus Duplessis to win on the money line as it was valued um, at plus I think 130 is when I maxed out on his peak for what I got him at, and I put about I think it was 250 bucks on him roughly, and won close to $500 in total. Um, and it was a very close fight. I've talked with a bunch of friends about the fight recently, and Sean Strickland definitely, when you look at all the stats, had more of the like total strikes, significant strikes, where he landed those strikes. The only thing that was really different was the control time and takedowns. That Duplessis shot 6 takedowns, or shot 11 takedowns and landed 6 of them. But it wasn't for that long of time, which was 2 minutes. Do I think Sean Strickland could have won? Yes, but I think I told you guys in the last video. Sometimes you got to put on that conspiracy tinfoil hat real quick and see what makes the company the most money, and that's why you're here, right? Like to win money. We're all basic bettors. I would feel that are going to listen to this podcast till we really grow, but we're here to win money. And if you're the UFC, what is your job as a business? To make money. And when I looked at Sean Strickland's total following, I think he's at 1.2 million followers on Instagram. And then when you look at Dricus Duplessis, he was at 350,000 before the fight started. And I wanted to gauge those numbers to see the growth um, and expectations if you're the UFC. Like, what is your market like? And what's the potential value of having one person win over the other. And so Dricus going from 350 followers is now at 410,000 followers. So there's another 60,000 followers that have been added to the Dricus train and the UFC marketing scheme that they have going on. Because do I think Dricus won? Probably not. Um, he had his moments for sure, but how I always decide a fight is if I never watch the fight and I get to see who's more damaged and beat up at the end of it. Dricus definitely looked like he got his ass beat. And Sean had a few cuts and scrapes, but if I had to decide who won the fight without watching it, Dricus definitely lost. And with it being such a close fought match, I do think Sean probably, in theory, won. But this is the conspiracy hat. Sometimes my bets are not here to make the most logical sense when you look at stats and statistics. It's more on what makes sense in a business model, say. And so Dricus getting 60,000 followers more on his first defense, and that's still growing, right? I'm just giving you the numbers as of today. I think exponentially that could get to 1 million when he goes to South Africa and defends that belt, as I see the UFC wanting to put him there, probably against Izzy, since they have that beef already, and Izzy's going to bring the following, and if Sean can pull it off, he's going to gain the following. So now the UFC has multiple roads to take in order to get their money. If he wins, regardless of if he wins or not, he'll make a fan base. So that was, I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in the last video, that sometimes it's conspiracy hat type of betting here. And in this case, it really worked out because I do think Dricus lost the fight. And with it being so close, you got to give it to the one who's going to make the company the most money. So that was a great bet for me. We're up, units in that sense. And usually my unit is going to be about $25 to $50 on how confident I am. It, flip-flops the units, which I think is good long term, as long as you, are correct on your picks, which I think here we're probably about a 60-40% win to loss ratio, which long term will be beating the casino if you choose the value side of things, which I also preach here is value betting. So that was a good fight. We broke down the women's fight. I was wrong on my pick with the Mayra Brona Silva, but I'll be honest, I even watched that fight when I was at my UFC house. We watched like the first round, and it was just not interesting. Like I said in the last video, I would not pay for that view, and I still stand by that. Good for Raquel. She was the good value side of things, but I was not going to place my hard-earned money working for the government that I do on that. So we'll go to the next fight, which was a very disappointing fight, as it would have made me like another $100, which was the Neil Magny versus Mike Malott fight. And I told you he was the last piece to the parlay that I built up for my safety parlay. And he was winning 2 of the 3 rounds and lost with 15 seconds left in the fight. I still think we were on the winning side of a bet, but when it comes to breaking down someone's psychology and how they think, Mike Malott showed me for future betting to never trust him. Because when he gets put into a corner, when he gets put into hard times and he's exhausted, which I agree, he was exhausted, he'll quit. And that's not me being rude, Mike. Yeah, I know, being an athlete, you'll watch that fight and said, you quit. Watching how you laid there in disappointment after the fight was ended, you quit. And that's something I won't respect or put money on again. If anything, I'll find the opponent that will knock your lights out versus just making you lay on the mat and making you quit. Because you didn't even get knocked out, you quit. So that was disappointing considering we had the Jillian Robertson part of the parlay correct and the Jazz DeVicious. I think those were actually really easy legs to the parlay, and Mike Malott was the biggest favorite on the card and shit the bed. So that is unfortunate, but that is gambling, guys, and that's where you don't send the house on something with 3 legs in it. Single bets a la carte. Pick and choose what you want, not a full course meal here. We choose precisely what we want to spend our money on in hopes that it comes back to us. What other fights did we choose? We had the Brad Katana versus Garrett Armfield fight. Close fight again. Hold on. I don't know how to edit, so I'm sorry. We'll keep going, but Garrett Armfield put up a good fight. I think I told you guys he'll have the more powerful punches in that fight, and I think that is what won him the fight. Charles Jourdain ended up losing. I think underestimated a size difference in that fight as Sean Woodson. I think if he were 3-4 inches shorter would have been taken down, but because his legs are so damn long, he was able to avoid Charles Jourdain's takedowns. And he actually, proved for me in the future that he can be bet on and relied upon. Sean Woodson, Charles Jourdain, I just think it was a matchup for him to lose the whole time. Now, hindsight's 2020, so good on you, Sean. Ramon Tavares, I know I broke down saying that not all rematches go the same way. I still think he might have lost that fight on a point-based approach, but because Sydney was so bloodied up by the second round, I think visually that took over more of the points in what was thrown as quality versus every time the judges looked up, they see a guy whose face is covered in blood and his dyed blonde hair is just red now. So I think that was a visual fight that ended up going in the reverse of what the first fight did. So that was good. Julian Robertson just wasn't even a fight, really. Got her knockout in the second round, so good on her. Was expecting a submission, but that's guessing, taking your shot right there, so whatever. Skip the. Actually, we broke down the Johan fight, and I told you as long as the fight goes longer, it's Sam Patterson's fight. But Johan just proved that he's a joke. So never bet on that guy again. You heard it first or second now here. Actually, first time saying that because I was on Johan. So whatever. Yasmin just mauled the first time I've ever seen a 10-7 round. Usually it's 10-8 showing dominance. She had this girl so wrapped up that it was a 10-7. So she needed to win on a finish no matter what. And then Malcolm Gordon versus Jimmy Flick. I'll give Jimmy Flick some praise, as I told you guys that he's been off on the 2-year layoff. Don't trust him, but he showed me wrong. So good on you, Jimmy Flick. If I'm gonna be here on here roasting people, I need to be able to be man enough to understand when I was wrong. So good on you, Jimmy Flick. So from here, we're going to go to the next event that I see is worth putting money on, and I'll break down to you why I think that is. So we're going to go to UFC 298 on February 17th. The headliner is going to be Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria, and it's already lined as a close fight. So I think it should be a 50-50 fight, which would be -110 for both parties. But it's currently -140 for Volkanovski being the champion, and Ilia Topuria +120. And this is going to be my a la carte choice of the month right here for February, and I'm putting it out, a month early basically, so you guys can decide on what you want to do. But Ilia Topuria is one of those guys that just has the it factor, and I found that in Sean O'Malley early on last year. Actually, let me clarify. I've known that for Sean O'Malley since I've been looking at sports. Like, I know what it means to have the it factor, as I had it here in Arizona with soccer. Like, I was on the newspapers. I was the number one person in the state of Arizona. So I know what it means to, like, when you become focused on something, to become obsessed with something. And Sean showed me that. And I see the same mindset, the same discipline in Ilia Topuria. He's always ready for his discipline, which in this case is fighting. And Alexander, being the greatest of all time in his weight class, I think we could all at least kind of get to that conclusion. He's a great fighter. I think when your shield of invincibility goes away, your confidence will go away. You'll question doing things that were never questioned before, that just came on instinct. Now he's going to be worried that something could happen to him. And Ilia Topuria is 14-0. He doesn't know that feeling. He doesn't know that reality. So with that in mind, Ilia Topuria will be the pick. And I think, again, Alexander Volkanovski will get knocked out. And I think it's going to be more pressure on Alexander now to defend this belt than ever. And it's going to be held in Anaheim, California, so it's kind of a neutral ground for both parties. And I think the crowd will be on Alexander's side. But this Topuria guy is no joke. And we've all thought that for Volkanovski for so long, is that he's no joke. But when he took that fight with Makhachev, right? He wasn't ready. He was arrogant. He showed that he needed this so bad, as he said in his post-interview, that he didn't take the process seriously. And Topuria has been building this process 14 fights in a row and has no idea the difference to not put that effort in every fight. And Volkanovski has enough money to live on for the rest of his life. His family's good. And I think Topuria comes from some royal family in Spain, so he doesn't even need the money. So he's out here for pride, to show himself that he can be disciplined and that this is who he is. And so Topuria is definitely the pick. And I think by knockout in the second or third round, I think Volk's going to have a good defensive strategy, but no offense. And I don't think that's how you're going to beat Topuria. And so I'm pretty heavy on this bet. I've already have about $300 in profit potential on this bet because I added him. I did like a $50 parlay between Dricus, Duplessis, and Taporia because they're underdogs, but these are guys that I think the line should be different. And because they're going up against champions, the champion should always have the higher price tag, which I agree with. But now that you're calling the shot on who's gonna be the new champion, I think this is another shot. And so my goal is to get another $500 on Taporia because everyone in the world is gonna be on Volk's side. We all like to see someone who gets knocked down and comes back from that. I agree on that fairy tale storyline, but this is not, I think, the matchup that causes that. So that's what I'll leave it on right there, is that Taporia will win by knockout in the second or third round. And I'm calling that a month in advance, so if you want to, tell your friends to watch this and things like that, say I'm silly. Could be, right? Volk's good. But I think it's a quick grab for a good amount of cash profit. And $500 would be another $100 added on to whatever you bet. So it's an $1,100 win when Taporia takes the belt. The next fight we'll break down is going to be the Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa fight. I think these guys are on level ground also, and that the line shouldn't be as wide for this fight because Paulo Costa hasn't fought in almost 2 years. And Robert Whittaker just got knocked out by Dricus Duplessis, so his shield of invincibility has faded away also, versus only being able to lose to Izzy. Now he's starting to open the door to everyone, is how I interpret that. When you look at their stats, they're both about the same height. They will be the same weight on fight night, or the day before at least. They're both 30, 33, 32, so same age range. Whittaker will have a 1-inch reach advantage, which is close enough to call it even. They're both going to fight orthodox. And then this is where it starts to differ. His significant strike totals is going to favor Paulo Costa. His accuracy is going to favor Costa. The takedown will be in Robert Whittaker's corner. But then you have to, with all those stats in mind, have to kind of project what you think the fight's going to look like. And I don't see Robert Whittaker trying to shoot for Paulo Costa. I think Paulo Costa is going to have too much weight to bear for Robert Whittaker because that guy's a big boy. He should not be in middleweight. But he cuts the weight, so sure, be in there. It's tough. I love Robert Whittaker. I think he's one of the greatest to ever do it also. Just couldn't get past his rival Izzy. But I'd hope that he wins so there's more options on the table because I just don't think Paulo Costa has that fan base to draw the really attractive events. Even though he's got his hair implanted, still don't think he's that attractive on a business model. So I'm going to lean Robert Whittaker here, but I think this could be a greasy 3-round fight. And when it comes to the conspiracy hats, right? I mean, I don't know many Aussies that draw as big as Whittaker. And they already have some good Brazilians when it comes to that nation and all the draws that they have in the UFC. So I'm going to favor Robert Whittaker, but I don't think it's going to be a dominant performance like we're all accustomed and hoping to see. So that would be the next fight after the main event, so co-main. Then going to like the headlining fight before any of those go as abouts, right? We got Jeff Neal and Ian Gary. And this one's tricky because Ian's going to be the favorite as he's the young guy. He's 13-0. He has everything kind of going for him, being the only other Irishman that we all know besides Conor McGregor. But Jeff Neal is definitely not a Neil Magny. Jeff Neal has power that's going to come back to you. And I guess the key things that I'm anticipating and interpreting to this fight is where's Ian Gary's mental going to be? And I'm going to know that on the night of interviews on Thursday night when they do their interviews. If Ian Gary mentions anything about what's going on in the headlines with his wife, with him not feeling well on that night and that's why he called it off, I'm going to question that guy big time. Because those sound like excuses and not like the goal that's set in front of you for this weekend. And so if I hear that stuff on Thursday night, my bets are going to be on Jeff Neal. If I don't hear that stuff, I will continue to bandwagon Ian Gary as he has the tools, but if his mental's not in the right state, I think his tools will be completely useless in Anaheim, California on February 17th. So this one, if like you just wanted to bet this fight blindly, I would definitely head on the Jeff Neal side because I think he's going to have good value, but also have all the tools to actually knock out Ian Gary. And me personally, I've been looking for a moment to fade Ian Gary, but it's hard because he is so good. But if he comes out with any type of bad publicity or doesn't handle his interviews well, I'm definitely probably going to put like 50 to 100 on Jeff Neal because that will be some big red flags for the 26-year-old who he's young, right? Can he handle the mental warfare versus just the combat warfare? So that's how I'd break down that fight. I would lean Jeff Neal if there's bad interviews, and I would lean in Ian Gary if he can handle the pressure with good responses and handle those appropriately. The next fight's going to be Merab Dvalishvili. Don't know how to say that right. Merab is what we're going to call him, versus Henry Cejudo. And this fight's going to be two heavy wrestlers. And we all know Henry Cejudo is an Olympian. And he's the double champ. Like, he has all the accolades, but has he passed his time? And I think he looked surprisingly really good versus Sterling. So that was a good sign for Henry that he's not completely out of the game. Going up against another very good wrestler and holding his own for 5 rounds, I think showed a lot of confidence that I would give Henry Cejudo. But now you're going up against someone that's 3 years younger than you, who also has a very heavy wrestling, grappling background. And Merab's no joke. So how do you kind of gauge who's going to be the better fighter? They're both in their 30s. Merab's 33, Henry's 36, so no young bucks. The reach will have a big advantage for Merab. 4 inches is a decent amount for his boxing. And his significant strike totals land about 5 to Henry Cejudo's 4 per round. And his accuracy for his punches is not a lot better. It's only 4%. But that could be the difference maker, and they're both going to shoot takedowns. It says Merab shoots about 6.5 when Henry does 2, and their takedown accuracy is both in the 30%. So with that in mind, I think this is actually going to be a unique fight where both their wrestling backgrounds is going to negate from one another, cross-cancel, right? And they're going to come to a striking discipline fight. And so with that in mind, with the 4-inch reach advantage, the 3 years younger, and having more significant strikes per minute is going to favor Merab. And so on that type of statistical standard, I will lean Merab, and he is currently the favorite. And I think he should be, and that would be a good parlay piece, I feel, going into this fight. Because even if Henry does somehow get some grappling going, like, we don't really see Merab on his back too often, but if he's that good at taking down and holding his position on top, I gotta figure that he's worked the bottom just as much. And so I don't think Henry will have too much of an advantage like he usually does in a wrestling format fight. So if those two negate and you have to go to a punching standard, Merab will be my pick. His price tag, I think, is a little bit too wide to bet him just straight up. So I would either choose him by a knockout, and Henry Cejudo is going to be exiting the UFC on that, or a decision. But I don't like to bet decisions, as that seems kind of a lame way to watch the fight. You're hoping that it goes to decision versus any type of excitement in the midst of the whole action. So that's where I just think Merab's a good parlay piece, as I think he'll have all the tools to beat Henry Cejudo. And the next fight's Anthony Hernandez versus Ikram Ali Shkrov, but those two just don't captivate me enough to really break down the fight. I think those first 4 fights is where the money's at, and so I'm just going to kind of skip this one for today at least. I don't think it's worth anyone's time. I think this is going to be a good fight either way. I guess I would just bet the underdog, seeing that I don't care, and so hope for the best there. But I just don't see it as like strategic to even consider putting money on this. And that's one thing at the a la carte channel that I have made here, is that you choose your decisions wisely versus choosing all decisions on the table. So that's how I'm going to break down UFC 298 and the recap of 297. I hope you enjoyed, what you watched here today. My name's Matthew, aka Mattman. This is the a la carte sports channel, and as always, cheers, boys.